Hi, my name is Ryan Harsha. I completed my research project under the mentorship of Morteza Samardi, and I'm recording this from my home in Irvington, New York. So my research paper is about it predicting the results of ninja competitions using AI. So ninja competitions, or rather the sport of Ninja Warrior, is based off of the TV show American Ninja Warrior, if you've ever seen it, which is basically where people do really hard obstacle courses, very technical obstacles that require a lot of strength and endurance and speed. Um, and one of the craziest things about American Ninja Warrior is that it's one fall and you're out. So it doesn't matter how good you are, how experienced you are, just one mistake can end your season. And as brutal as that is, that's one of the things that draws many people to it, and originally got me interested in the show. Um, and as someone who actually competes in ninja competitions, because now there's a sport that's based off of the TV show where people do competitions year round. And the format is very similar. So you're doing different kinds of courses, but one fall can end your season. And it's a very brutal and unforgiving format. And as someone who's competed in that for years and now competes professionally, I know as much as anyone else how brutal that can be for athletes. I mean, I've myself had many competitions that I was prepared for, and just with one mistake like that, it was over. Um, and this nature of ninja, although it makes it very unique and special, it leads many people to believe that perhaps we can't predict ninja competitions because it's not like a soccer game where if you miss a goal, you have the rest of the 90-minute game to make it up. It's not like baseball where you miss, you get a strike, you have two more. Like this is really one and done. So um, you would think that even with an AI model, it would be difficult to predict results because how good someone is, how well prepared they are, doesn't necessarily guarantee the best results. But I figured there's only one way to find out. So I took to the World Ninja League website, which is the most well currently established league in the sport of ninja, and they introduced a new feature called athlete stats, where basically throughout the season for a given set of athletes in a division, they'll rank things like their speed, their endurance, their obstacles per competition, the season points that they amass during the season, and essentially um, after ranking all those like athlete stats for the top guys in each division, the season culminates with a world championship where all of the top athletes will compete and try to win from all around the world. So, my strategy for my model was to use a correlation matrix to find a couple of the uh, the variables which seem to correlate the best with the actual results from a world championship which had occurred in the most recent season. The reason why I chose not to use all of the variables was because that proved to be too complicated for the model to attain good results. So I decided to narrow it down to two. And after using a correlation matrix, I was able to determine that the two variables, the best correlation to performance were average obstacles completed per competition, and the before an athlete fell, and the total number of points they amassed during the season, which is relative to how they placed in the competition and the people they were competing against. Um, and so, with this in mind, the reason why I chose to compare this to the World Championship results is because um, these stats are all provide great valuable insight. However, all these ninjas from around the world are competing at different gyms with different equipment. So how are we able to tell who's actually doing better in a given area? Certain obstacles will be harder, some will be easier. The World Ninja League Championships changes all that because it's completely standardized courses. People are running using the same equipment, the same courses, just adjusted for each division. So the idea was that if the athlete stats showed a strong correlation, a strong R squared score, ideally above zero point 0.9 to the world championship results, then that means that perhaps we can predict ninja results. Perhaps in this league, these athlete stats accurately depict how they can perform at the world championships. So what we did is we took a data set from what was at the time the most recent world championship in 2024, and we took athlete stats from that uh, from the young adult male division. The coolest thing is I actually competed in this division, so I was able to take my own stats and my stats to the world championship along with a bunch of other people's, and we compared it. Um, and the output variables we were comparing for performance at the world championship were placement in the world championship bracket, which is basically how long they went until their first fall through all the stages, and then the strongest ninja bracket, which basically took their performance on any stage they qualified for, plus some other side competitions that were hosted at the World Championship, and which tested things like speed, endurance, and technique, and gave an overall ranking. So our results were rather underwhelming, but not necessarily unexpected, as we found that there was a pretty low correlation. I think our R squared score value was about only 0.62 rounded to the nearest hundredth. And although that was disappointing, we had come to expect that potentially a result like that might happen for a couple reasons. Um, the first being that, like we said, ninja is extremely unpredictable. When you have a sport that's just one and done like that, it's inherently going to be less predictable, like sports where you have multiple chances, because flukes happen to even the best of athletes. But we think there's more than that at play. One thing is that although the world championship is standardized, unfortunately, with our sport and the research we have right now, there's still no way to really quantify difficulty. See, in a sport like baseball, you could take a pitch speed, right? Trying to hit a 95-mile fastball is going to be more difficult than one that's 40 miles an hour. Whereas with ninja, it's not that simple. Yes, there are moves that us ninjas know are objectively harder than others, but we don't have a quantified difficulty scale saying that one move is a 7 out of 10, the other is a 9 out of 10. It's all subjective, and technically different things can be difficult for people with more difficult for people with different strengths and so on. And so we can't quantify that information. Then when it comes to looking at athlete stats, how do we know who's actually completing the objectively harder obstacles? And if we don't know that, how do we actually know that who's doing better or who's expected to do better at the world championships? So our conclusion was that it looks like we just need more data for the sport to be able to conduct a successful investigation like this. But I had a lot of fun pioneering research for this amazing sport that I hope gains even more traction in the future. Thank you.